from Tampa. I started acting there right after high school. Well, I started when I was really young and my parents put me into like classes and stuff like that. They were very supportive of me and my brothers in the arts, and I just went straight to acting and entertainment. And I've always done like little impressions and skits for my family, but it was not skits, more like my own stand-up as a very small child. My mom would just get everybody around and they'd be like, Kyle, go do something. And I was like, well, I don't know what you mean. They're like, just entertain us. And I was like, all right. And then I'd figure it out. It was probably the skits, like me doing my own little stand-up routines for the family, and impressions. I've always done impressions. I don't know why, but I don't add them into my stand-up, but I use them as like character work and like skits and improv and stuff like that. But yeah, I've always done that since I was a small child. I'd just see somebody on TV and then I'd practice doing their voice and working with their accents. And I think my parents saw that, and my parents were luckily really attentive and supportive, and they just started pushing us into like classes and stuff like that. That was probably it. I was maybe 5 or 6 when I started like making up jokes to tell my family, and then started organizing them and putting them together to do like stand-up routines. I didn't even know what stand-up comedy was at the time because I was so young, but I just remember I was like, well, they're gonna sit me out in the living room and do that, so I'll write those. So I would like come up with little jokes and I'd write them in crayon, and then I would do them for family and stuff. And then after that, when I really got hooked by the acting bug, was I always kind of knew that I wanted to, but I think the first time was I did a play where I was a lily pad in like kindergarten, and I was also like the narrator. Not to brag, but it was good. So I just loved it. I loved making people laugh and smile ever since I was a child. It's a very torrid love triangle between them, because there is a part of me that I call that my writer side, my writer brain. That's where I come up with all the jokes and create everything. And that's where I've started falling in love with directing and just creating everything from the ground up. But I still kind of bring that over to acting as well. So it is the entertainment. It's not just the laughs and making people smile. That's how it started. And from there, I realized that I just really liked creating things. So these characters, like, instead of doing impressions like I would for certain things, those are great when they're called for, but acting and character work, I've always done just so much research, even as a small child, like doing high school plays and stuff, and then just creating that mindset and this whole character, like my own backstories, and building that from the ground up. So I think once I figured out that I had that creative writing brain, it opened all doors. So it wasn't just the smiles, it was also being able to tell a good, captivating story or play a character so well that people forget that it's Kyle, like behind the screen or on stage. And yeah, just really making a connection with people. I got lucky. In Florida, they have, and they do it all over the country, they have magnet school programs where you go through and they take all of the kids from that audition. You audition to go there for like film and theater and stuff. And I started that way. And there was some amazing talent locally there that was already there as well that I would learn from. And there was great teachers that were from the area. And I just got really lucky. I got kind of steered into it. After middle school and high school, I started going to a local one that was not, but our director was amazing. He passed a few years ago, but he was a big motivator for me. I wouldn't say mentor, but he really showed me how to be a professional at times and then still have fun with it as well. Riverview High School in Tampa, Florida. It's just south of Tampa. We were the Sharks, which is fitting. From the director, I learned that you can always, his name was Mr. Hawkins, you can always be better. Never settle was kind of his like message that I learned from him. And that, I like to say, kind of turned me into a shark, which was our school mascot. It's really cheesy, but I always make a metaphor. I gotta keep going. I gotta keep doing more. I can't stop, because to stop is to die like a shark does. So yeah, that's kind of where I got that passion. College, I went to college. I went to a community college. I wasn't very serious about it. I never really learned from sitting and studying and discussing. I always learned from doing. And I don't have any problem with people who, I just learn differently. Like if you sit me down with a math problem and you tell me how to do it, it'll take me longer to get it than if you just give me like 4 sticks and then take 6 away. Like, I had to always see it and do it. And I've learned that that's the easiest way for me to pick up on things behind the camera. I went to community college for a little bit, and I was already acting professionally, because as soon as I graduated high school, I just started searching for auditions and stuff. And so I started acting professionally, and I was paying way more than I was making acting to study acting. So I was like, I gotta pick one at this point, because I also graduated in the middle of this was 2006, 2007, 2008, the big recession that we went through and everything. So it was time to start making some financial choices, because I didn't want to be a drain on my parents any longer. So I started acting professionally, and then I was just it from there. It's just been projects since, learning as much as I can. I try to take, that's, like I said, that's like my schooling. So every time I do a project, I try to learn something new or work on a side of it that I haven't before as well. And I'm pretty good at networking, so I'll speak with if I get cast in something, I'll ask. It never hurts to ask. Like, can I learn more? Can I be backstage? Can I watch how you edit this? Can I do different things like that? And then just diving in and doing it has taught me more than I would have learned in a school setting. Okay, so for example, in Church Wives, while we were filming Church Wives, I learned so much from being in the room with Tiago, not of all people. He's amazing. He's a phenomenal talent, but he was such a good professional. He was so quick to pick up notes and make changes and not be hard on himself, which is something that I see with a lot of actors, is that when they get a note or something, they internalize it too much. And he was just like, okay, this really has nothing, it's not my fault. It's like nobody's upset or anything like that. So he would take notes really quickly. So being in the room with him, it taught me different things. But if you're speaking like seeing an actor like in a film or like in a play or something that is just blown me away that I could learn from, there are techniques and there are things and there are choices that actors will make, and I'll watch the choice, not the effect. So it'll be the cause and the effect. I'll watch what in them causes that cool effect that happened. And then, so I'll watch that choice, that decision, and I'll try to not emulate that, but it gives me something to think about from a character's perspective when I'm performing. So I can then reuse that later, but it's not mimicking, it's not doing an impression of what they're doing. It's just taking that same idea or like an inspiration and then getting my own effect out of that cause. I feel like it's not necessarily because of things that I've seen. I feel like things that I've seen could influence that a little bit, just depending on choices that I'll make. But I feel like every person inside of them has this really raw, instinctual being that just kind of needs to be tapped into in a different way. And you've got to find your own triggers to get into that. I mean, whether it's the way you think about something or the way you focus and listen when you're in a scene, or it comes down to those different choices that kind of like makes brain waves to get to the correct decision. But yeah, it really comes down to committing to as well. Just making that choice to, no matter how ridiculous I feel or how wrong this feels, that's okay, because that's not you. It feels wrong to do certain things like that on film, like to treat a woman like a prostitute or like threaten her life or something. But it's important to tell that story because that happens. So it's important to not only tell that story, it's important to tell that story right. So you just gotta shed any kind of fear that might get in the way of that, and just tap into that raw, this is real in the moment and it's not Kyle kind of thing. That actually has been a rough journey, because sometimes I'll get to places. I did a play called Embedded in Tampa at the Performing Arts Center. Sorry, now it's the Strass Center. I'm old. I don't look it. But I did a play called Embedded, and it was written by Tim Robbins. It was an amazing show, and I played a soldier, and it's based on a true person. There's a soldier in Iraq who accidentally killed a family at a checkpoint and then lost it. And they intertold several different stories of soldiers and embedded reporters at the time. And that's how they got these like news stories and stuff. That took me to a kind of a weird level where I wasn't sleeping and I was having really vivid nightmares about like images that I haven't seen, basically what was happening in the play. And I was like, every time I'd close my eyes, I was like seeing dead bodies and stuff. And then it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, I'm taking this way too seriously. I know my character, and I think that's what it came down to, was I was overthinking. I knew my character and I wasn't trusting my instincts. Caroline had really most of the characters completely written, full backstories and how these people were and the reasons that they were there. And she had a premise, and she contacted me, and we were working on a web series called Ivacaine together, and she started telling me a little bit about the idea. And then I just told her, I was like, hey, let's do this. Come over, let's just write it. I don't want to waste time. It's a really funny idea. So she really was the inspiration behind that. I mean, it's her baby. We sat down and we wrote it together, and I added some characters, and we made it just a better story through collaboration. And she had a nice outline of everyone, but we didn't know how to arrange it yet. So really, I just came in and organized it. Yeah, we were on a bit of a time crunch through a lot of it, different locations and things like that is something that I'm actually learning a bit more. More takes. I should have done a lot more takes. This is the first time that I've directed in a while, or at least for film. So I knew it was going to be a challenge. Editing has also been a challenge, but the advice that I've always gotten is always do more takes. Certain things that come down to it is like really editing, which being in editing taught me more about directing than directing did. Just because now I have to picture the entire story, not only as a story, but I also have to picture it in little segments of vignettes and how they look and connect. I could have done more takes. I think sometimes, like if you're working on a set like that, they'll overdo things for like lighting, and there's certain directors that just get into their head that it has to be this way exactly. We went for a very improvisational feel for Church Wives as well, which really made it easier to do less takes. Because then you don't have to be perfect with the lines, you don't have to be perfect with the stylized shooting and stuff like that. It would very much be about these characters, and that's the kind of story that I wanted to tell. And luckily we had some really good actors that everybody knew who their character was, and they could just kind of live in that moment as that character, and that's what I wanted to show. Because if we're gonna do it as a series, I feel like we can afford to not be so, we need this here, this here, this here, that there, this here, and then we stick it together, and then we edit it, and we get it going. With the idea of it being a series, we can really delve into who these people are and get to see that. I think that's exactly how they're possibly bad. That's exactly why they're bad, is because you lose that heart and you lose that connection that you get unlike theater. I like to get the actors in the same scene together a lot more than just them looking at someone over the shoulder and then doing 3 lines and then cutting to the other side and then doing those 3 lines, different things like that. I mean, I know a lot of directors will do several takes from one side and then switch sides and then do several takes that way, which is nice because it keeps you in the moment for that scene. But I really liked doing Church Wives mockumentary style, because at least for this project, it gave me the chance to have them just sit next to each other and then just be in the room together. And then you kind of see it, and we shot it that way on purpose. I wanted to see it kind of like a play. You see it very fourth wall, even though we're breaking that fourth wall. I think that's why we kind of had to at points, by them looking at the cameras and things like that, because it's a mockumentary style. It very much feels like a satirical play on stage almost. Like you have harsh sets, there's not a lot of movement. It's pretty fun though. I would say Caroline has final say. She trusts me to make a lot of the notes because I know the project so well. We wrote it together, so we both know exactly how it should look. And then as director, I knew exactly how I wanted certain things to look when I shot them and stuff like that. Luckily, Levi is a very good friend, and he's such a good collaborator that there's no harsh feelings to give him notes or anything like that, because he knows that it's supposed to be a certain way. And we finally got the full skeleton of it. So we have the whole episode, but now we have to go through and just add some stuff and like move some stuff around and make it tell a nice congruent story. No, I hate actors. No, I'm just kidding. I've always been a big fan of Ed Norton, so much that I'll call him Ed instead of Edward. It's a sign of cool respect. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. It really depends on what mood I'm in, to be honest. I have a few favorite actors, but I don't know if people have seen them a lot yet. Steve Garland is an amazing, phenomenal actor. He's always been my favorite since I was like 16. I saw him do a play in Tampa, and he's been now on shows like Bloodline and different things like that, and everything he's in, he is just phenomenal. I like Donald Glover a lot for everything, not just acting. I think he's a really good actor, like on Atlanta and stuff, and then he's just so multi-talented. My wife, honestly, my wife is phenomenal. I know that sounds cheesy, but she has the most expressive face, and she does mostly theater, and when she does comedy, she is so funny. She's one of the funniest comedic actresses that the world is gonna see soon. I do love sci-fi though. I think sci-fi has a way of telling like really exaggerated metaphors if it's done right. If you do it bad, it's so bad, and then it ruins the name of most sci-fi. But if you get films like The Fifth Element or like Prometheus, which I think was before its time, I don't think people have caught on to that yet. I really think that stories like that, you can tell these giant metaphors about the world today and then make it sink into people's heads emotionally. Like you plant a seed is what I call it. Like when I write, I like to write things that have a bigger message. They have a bigger meaning, and they reflect our society as it is today or what needs to happen. So you just plant a little seed. And I think that makes more change in the world than just yelling about it or fighting, literally fighting about it, you know what I mean? So certain things like that. But one of the first screenplays I wrote was called Subject 315. I'm still gonna do it one day. It's a really great story. It's fun. That one's gonna be good, but it's on a big scale, so I'm waiting until I can start producing at that level, and I'll wanna be older anyways when I do it, just to do it right.